My name's Chris. I'm a high school teacher and I'm one of the co-founders of Zip Captions. Um, this project started out of me teaching students with hearing loss and understanding that there was a lot of work that needed to be done in the education space to make access to sound and voice and classes more accessible for everyone, not just for those with hearing loss. Sal?
Oh, you can go ahead.
So I'm Emmanuel and Sal. I'm a student at St. George's with Hearing Loss. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, I'm Sal, and I'm an MOSD itinerant educational specialist uh, working with students with hearing loss. Um, I have hearing loss myself, and I'm a user of a sound processor as well.
Perfect. So we're going to go through some questions, and Emmanuel, Sal, you can choose who's going to answer these. You can both answer them. Um, you can, you can say whatever you want. Be as honest as you can be. So, Sal, you work as a teacher of the deaf. What exactly does that entail?
Well, that entails me working with students in the mainstream who go to regular schools. And what I do is pull them out of class. We have one on one sessions where we target listening, speech, and language goals. What we try to do most of the time is use the material that's being covered in school to target all of the different domains that we target. And it goes beyond listening, speech, and language. We're also looking at self advocacy skills. We just want to make sure that our students are ready to advocate for themselves by the time they finish school, preferably before, when they're in high school and in elementary school too. Um, and it involves a lot of traveling in my case because I go from school to school.
Emmanuel, you receive services from MOSD. What does that look like?
So essentially, once a week, usually at lunch, we will have one-on-one sessions, like Sal said, and we'll go over like listening skills, chatting skills, also like basic knowledge of how to master works and going over strategies and like targeting problems that could be happening. So like say I was in a bad place in my class, then Sal could intervene and say, you know what, man, it should be closer to the door or further from the door or something like that.
We do
Perfect.
hope that you'll be more independent in doing that. That's our goal.
Sal, you said that you're a sound processor user. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience with hearing loss?
Sure. Um, I use one sound processor on the left side. It's a Ponto sound processor, which means that I'm hearing through bone conduction. So the microphone basically picks up sound and transmits the sounds through the mastoid bones and bypasses the middle ear and goes directly to the cochlea. I know that sounds quite technical, but I think it's as simple as I can think of to explain it. My experience with that has been, I've had my ups and downs. It's still difficult to listen in noisy situations. I think that learning process is lifelong. Um, but, with time, everybody learns different strategies in different situations. And, my goal with my students is to just make them aware of their strengths and weaknesses, like I'm aware of my strengths and weaknesses in different acoustic environments, and to try to troubleshoot not only with their technology, but with the things that we can do as people with hearing loss to make it easier for ourselves. And I'm not limiting what I'm saying to technology. Also, how we advocate for ourselves in different situations, asking questions, asking for repetition, positioning ourselves appropriately, and knowing the environment, and really, scanning the physical environment and making sure that we're positioned well enough so that we can access. Once we bring technology into the picture, then wow, it just makes everything much better.
So I think that leads really nicely into my next question, which is what challenges do you find in your day-to-day life with hearing loss? So like this is a question you can both answer, but like Sal, you hit upon like loud, noisy situations, which I think even those of us without hearing loss often find a challenge. But what challenges do you find that you face that maybe somebody with typical hearing would not have to overcome or face?
I can think of something.
Sure.
So basically, when you're having conversations as a group, where like there's a big class conversation going on, it's quite difficult to follow the conversation from where it's going. So that's where the captions or assistive technology can come into play, because it's gonna help you like figure out who's speaking and what they're saying. So just figuring out where the sound is coming from, which is already challenging enough as it is. And so yeah, I hope the
How how
technology.
how do you how do you overcome those things?
Usually I make it clear them deaf. So like most of my friends, not all my friends, and most of the people that I interact with are very nice about it and very like sincere about like making sure that I can see who's talking and stuff like that. I also tell the teacher to maybe like repeat the questions or something so that I can actually check and just have to look at the teacher.
And do you use any technology to help you do that?
Well, it depends. In French class, I'll use I'm, which is like a radio kind of that goes to my cochlear implants, and then sometimes uh, in miscellaneous classes, I'll use the captions to fill in the blanks if there's a lot of talking or something like that.
So what about you? Do you have a similar experience there? Like you find yourself going to technology to get access to information, or do you find that you have far greater access and don't require technology as much?
Like I said earlier, it really depends on the acoustic environment and also the kind of information that I need to access. Um, in typical social settings, I like to believe that I'm okay without assistive listening technology such as RMs and edumics. But if I'm attending a conference, or if I'm in a work meeting, or I remember actually when I was teaching at the college, I had a lot of difficulty locating sound localization for me in my particular case is quite challenging. And as good as the technology is out there, at this point in time, I don't think it's gotten to the point where all of the barriers can be taken down, because technology is technology. People are people. And like Emmanuel was describing earlier, when people are talking, when there's a classroom discussion, no matter how good the technology is not going to dictate to the speakers to slow down or to wait for us to locate where the sound is coming from, or to give us the time that we need to process what we just heard through our technology and get ready for the next bit of information, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I think the biggest challenge is locating sound and getting myself ready to take in what's coming next.
Perfect. Um, so shifting a little bit in the direction of my question. So how do you think that we can make the world a slightly more accessible place?
Well, I think the biggest factor would be the people. The people need to be more conscious about just being more educated in disabilities, not just hearing loss, but just in general. People need to be more educated with the difficulties that people face. And I also think that if technology comes into play, it would be more like technology that's technology that's seamless, that allows us to keep up with the conversation and not like have to make us slow down, set it up, make everyone wait for me to be ready. Uh, it would be like glasses that you can see captions, or it would be something like the captions, stuff like that. Would be really ideal.
For me, I think, I mean, I agree with Emmanuel. First and foremost is sensitizing people to the differences that different people face, whether it's hearing or vision or mobility. I think sensitizing people and almost normalizing it in the sense that it's okay to talk about it and it's okay to ask. And I think on both sides of the table, people need to work at this. The people who have the challenges and the people who are dealing with others who have challenges. I think that that taboo, if you want to call it a taboo, or that uh, holding back in discussing this openly, that's what needs to be taken down before trying to take down any barriers. Once that level of comfort is targeted, uh, the barriers can come down much more easily. And a combination of educating people alongside the technology, I think that's what the world needs in terms of making everything more accessible, both in school and in social situations.
So, like, you both mentioned technology, and obviously, like, we've been talking about live captioning a lot. Um,
Mhm.
so I kind of have two questions for you. Like, where do you think that live captioning fits into school? And thinking further afield, and like Sal, you said that you find when you're in a staff meeting or in a work meeting, you require more access to assistive technology, if we want to call it that. How do you feel that live captions could fit into that environment too?
So do you want to?
I have an idea already, but if you
No, you
have,
can, you can go.
I think live captioning um, is much easier than we think it is, and should be used across the board. I don't think it's rocket science to have live captioning in meetings, in staff meetings, in all classrooms in school. I know that's the ideal situation, and somebody, people can say, "Oh, Sal's dreaming. He's living in an audiologist's dream," right? But I think it's much easier than we think it is. I think what's um, hindering the this process is money.
Yeah, possibly. Um, I, so I was going to say that it's. Could you repeat the question actually?
Yeah, so how do you feel, it was two-part question, right? So how do you feel that live captions fit into or could fit into the school environment, but also how do you think that they could fit into the work environment? So I think Sal hit upon the work environment question. So how do you think that they could fit into your life in school and in the classroom, maybe outside of the classroom?
Yeah, I remember now. What I was going to say was that I feel like the captions, live captions, gives you time to catch up. It slows things down for you, so like you can actually comprehend what's going on instead of just hearing it. You can actually see, oh, that's what you mean, not just oh, that's what she said. But that's the difference. So like work environment wise, I just feel like it'd be really useful to be able to make notes out of the captions, not outside from a accessibility standpoint. It's just a really useful study tool if it was properly used. You just have the captions, and then you have like a note taker beside it, and then you can just take notes from the captions. So that's the big thing.
So I know there's tools that exist for online meetings that allow you to do that, but you'd like to see that be able to happen with sort of a face-to-face conversation where you could pull that information out of what's being said.
Yeah,
That's a really good idea.
in an educative environment. Yeah.
I think
In
that's
a
a really
social
nice idea.
in a social context, do you think that something like that would be useful by using your cell phone or an iPad?
Yeah, so that would be a bit less useful. Like captions, the captions,
Yeah.
or live captions would be less useful because it takes time to like go on it. But it's even if it's fast, then you're kind of like you just have like this thing in front of a person. So it's like also it's just a bit less seamless. So it'd be cool if you could have a more integrated version of that.
Okay.
How do you both currently make use of captions? Not just live captions, but any form of captions.
I use it in like I use captions more than sound in YouTube videos or TV shows and movies, just because it's super easy to use and they're just right there. Why not use them? And then there's also the fact that like live captions, I can use them to so like say there's a lot of talking going on from the teacher, and I'm kind of starting to feel like overwhelmed or kind of it's a lot of information or tired, then live captions like helps me like capture the essential information, the what I deem essential.
Do you find that using live captions leads to less auditory fatigue in class?
If I'm being completely honest, I haven't used it enough for that. But I will say that if it was consistently working like, all the time, then yeah, it would. But it's not, so I'm still using my my like awareness to figure out what the teacher is saying, especially in different languages. But English is the most accurate in the captions.
So what are your thoughts on that? Like the fact that using some sort of live captioning could lead to less auditory fatigue or a lower auditory load?
Yeah, if it was effectively like if it was effective, yeah, for sure. But if it's not, then it actually leads to more thinking because then you're trying to say, hey, what is this? Oh, right, it must have been that, and you're guessing at that. So it might be so like it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Again, it depends on the situation. Are you using live captioning in a situation like this where it's a more relaxed and we don't have to leave the room thinking about exactly what we said and trying to remember it and regurgitate it or write an exam, or are we sitting in class listening to the science professor or the math teacher? I think it all depends. What I did notice about me is that when I use captions when I watch movies all the time. If it's in a different language, if I'm watching a movie and the original language is in Spanish, I'll use the captions. And if it's in English, I'll still use the captions because it's just easier. But what I did notice is that watching a foreign movie with subtitles, I feel much more tired at the end than I would if I used captions for an English movie, right?
Right.
That I think is a given. And if I were to compare watching a movie with and without captions, again, I guess it depends on the movie, but all in all, I do feel a little more tired. There is a more auditory fatigue for me using the captions But at the end of the day, I feel that I need it because I would miss 3/4 of the movie, right?
Exactly.
So, like you said, it's a double-edged sword.
So you've both had the opportunity to try out zip captions. So what's your experience been so far with zip captions?
I think it's fascinating. I'm really impressed with the accuracy. When have I used it? Well, look, I mean, I'm using it now. I've used it in a few other situations with my students, uh, specifically with Emmanuel. I think we used it a couple of months ago, and we were both impressed. He said, "Oh, wow, that's impressive." So it was quite nice. It was really nice for me at that time to use it. What do you think?
Well, I agree with everything Sal just said. Uh, but I like if I'm gonna be saying like if there's a way to like target the stand somewhere, that would be pretty cool because then sometimes there's like lots of side chatter. It's picking that up and combining it with what the teacher is saying or something like that. It's a bit confusing. So if you could like figure out the accuracy of it, like if you could make it so that it's just in front of the computer or just behind it, something I don't really know the.
So we can chat a little bit more about that at the end, but I have some suggestions for you on how you can overcome that. We've done some experimenting, but I have some suggestions. Um, so last couple of questions. What would be your wish for the future in terms of sort of accessibility relating to hearing loss?
I didn't catch that.
What
What?
would be your wish for the future in terms of accessibility?
Uh,
Right, Chris?
Yep.
So do okay. So I'm not sure if this is too futuristic or whatever, but I think having glasses that can display captions like I mentioned before over someone's head or like showing you who's speaking would be really neat, and it would allow you to do a lot more. You know, like just join the conversation at that more ease instead of like trying to figure out what's being said and hoping what you say makes sense with whatever's going on and stuff like that.
Sal, what about you?
My wish for the future in terms of accessibility would be that making everything accessible is not such a task anymore, that it becomes a natural part of being able to communicate and accessing whether you need that or not. um I can't I can't think of anything right now in terms of being specific, with regards to technology, but the way I feel right now, making things accessible is still a huge task. So if we can find something or many things, and again go back to educating people about the importance of this, um, I think that would make a world of a difference.
I would have that.
And
I think there should be an effort in schools to like maybe like 1 class per year or something, 1 hour a year or something, where you just remind people of the class about the different types of disabilities and what you can do for them if you are a deaf, mobile, like unmobile person. That would be really handy if the people around you actually knew what to do without you having to try to figure out what they think so that you can try to explain to them what's going on. If you like my drift.
yeah. And do you find that you have to tell your teachers, like do you find yourself educating your teachers as to what they need to do? Or like do you think that
Uh,
there's a gap there?
no, I mean I'm definitely telling my teachers what they have to do and what I'm gonna try to do so that they know my intentions. But honestly, it depends on the teacher, obviously. But in most places, almost anywhere but school, I definitely have to call up to the guy and explain to him stuff, or her stuff. but in school it's a bit less because they already have the movements mostly.
And like my last question for you was like, how do you think that society can help us with this? But I think you've both answered that question in your responses to the last one. Um, like more awareness, more education of the general population. Like I saw yesterday that in the UK they've started putting sign language signs on in the train station. So when they do the announcements for the trains, there's actually an automated like sign language interpreter, and it's signing the announcement that's happening. So I
Oh,
think it is, yeah, it's really cool. So I think it's happening. It's just happening very slowly, right? And I think what I'm hearing from both of you is that you'd like that to happen faster.
I would just love to interject. Why are they doing sign language if they can just use letters? Because letters on screen have been around for ages, but sign language must be confusing for people who like my dad. She's not deaf at all. He's not even remotely deaf or anything, and she tells me that she has trouble in the metro or in the airport or in the train for like it sounds super weird, like it's like a robotic voice. So it benefit everyone if you just captions on the screen somewhere.
good
Yeah,
point.
I was in the UK a couple of summers ago, and I was in the train station, and the fire alarm went off, and I had no idea what was happening. They made an announcement, you couldn't hear it, and it was almost impossible to understand what was happening, why it was happening, what you were meant to do. And it turned out it was a test, but you couldn't hear the announcement that was saying it was a test because it was so echoey. So I think you're right. Like yeah, sign language is one step of that, but there's so much more surrounding just general accessibility for everyone.
I think it's
Well,
really important to start this in schools because once uh, children and young adults grow up with having so much accessibility, whether they need it or not, it becomes just a way of life. I mean, I was
absolutely.
caught in a high school in the basement. I was using the nurse's office, and the alarm went off. Luckily, it was just a drill, but it was the alarm went off, and I didn't hear it. And I was the only one roaming around the hallways when everybody was inside with with the classroom doors locked. So it's dangerous. It's much more dangerous than we think it is when we really think about people who don't have access or who don't have full access. And I'm thinking in a situation like that, why didn't they have lights going on and off? Red for fire, blue for a lockdown. And it's easy. It's just, it's an easy way to handle situations like that. And they haven't thought about that yet.
Man,
And it's frustrating.
So it's something that you're saying. So I go to this camp, like a sleepaway camp, and every year they do a drill, and like, it usually does go into effect. When someone goes missing or someone or there's a fire or something, a fire alarm, and it's like this one speaker in the middle of camp, and the camp is like 2 kilometers, probably more than that, but it's really, really big. So not everybody can hear it. And then they're not actually that different. It sounds like that different for what kind of alarm it is. They have to do different things according to the alarm. So there needs to be something a bit better. So like lights where more educated people, like the kids around you, at a given period should look, hey, there's a deaf person, or hey, there's a blind person somewhere. We should go check if they're okay, something like that.
and I think that's a big part of things in schools as well. Like schools, I think are ironically relatively inaccessible places. Um, like we have lots of stairs, right? They're not accessible for people who are in a wheelchair. We often don't have visual fire alarms. Like they don't cater to people who are deaf. Like we don't have braille signs. They're not accessible to people who are blind. And whilst we put those things in, once we get students who require them, it requires a lot of advocacy to make that happen. And I think that's the thing that you've both emphasized throughout our conversation, is that like there's a lot of advocacy here that's required, both from on all sides, and there's a lot of things that need to change. So I wanted to thank you both for answering my questions and for joining us. It was great to talk to you.